Yes, good morning. We are back again. It's the business show, and I am Daisy Atuchiko. As usual, we have amazing people in the studio with me. Right now, I have Izu coming through. Izu, how have you been?
Very well.
Very well.
Restful May so far.
Restful May so far.
Start off with a public holiday.
It's 4 days.
I was going to say, it's been 4 days. You slept for 4 days straight?
Yeah, but we're here and it's good. It's a good thing. So great. Esther, we have missed you like forever.
I know.
But then you came through.
Yep.
Still. How have you been?
I'm the opposite of Izu. I'm getting my hustle up. Which one is rest for me? My goodness.
All right. And today we are blessed with a CEO and an expert in the building. He is the founder and CEO of Sabi Writers, Chinonso Obogo. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
All right.
How are you doing today?
I am doing amazing. Thank you.
Good.
Okay, so first off on the show, like we always do, we start off with all of the major business headline making the rounds. And they've been quite interesting ones making the rounds. Remember, we had Labor Day and as in May Day, and a lot of things were said, and a lot of things were promised from the incoming government, and we had lots of people speaking as well. But then I'm just going to take this from Man, Necker, and Asima. They are coming in to talk to the federal government on the excess hike. So they are the organized private sector. They're the organized private sector of Nigeria, comprising of the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, the Nigerian Association of Chambers of Commerce, Industry, Mines and Agriculture, and of course the Nigerian Employers Consultative Association and the Nigerian Association, basically everyone, both the Nigerian Association of Small Scale Industries and the Nigerian Association of Small and Medium Enterprises. So basically they've all come together as the organized private sector to reject the hike by the federal government. So the hike was contained in a circular dated as at 20th of April. It was signed by the Minister of Finance. In the statement signed, I am trying to rush through the reports. So they called for an immediate reversal of the hike. They said the increase was unwarranted, ill-timed, and what English would I use now? It doesn't sit well with the Nigerian economy as at this time and the manufacturing sector as well. And that's on the excise tax hike. So there was an excise tax hike as of the 20th of April, which would come into effect very soon. So basically the organized private sector is saying no to this. Izzy, you're an expert. And with excess tax hike as at what we have right now, what say you to this?
Okay, so I'm trying to actually figure out what excise means, because I just would think of excise from the concept of excise duty.
Okay.
Basically,
yeah.
That's what I would see. I've always said that the government only has 3 roles when it comes to economics. 1, reduce unemployment. 2, reduce inflation. And 3, keep people productive by making sure the economy grows by high GDP. Anything after that is storytelling. So one of the biggest problems we have right now, apart from security in Nigeria, is unemployment. So anything the government is doing that doesn't help reduce unemployment is probably not the best thing to do. So if you increase any duties, what happens is that the manufacturers will transfer that to the people who
prices.
are buying,
and
then people will buy less, and when people buy less, the business will make enough money, and they have to retrench people. So in the end, circular flow of income is inverted, really. So I'm not sure that's the best thing to do right now. One of the best things we want to do is to promote local production.
Okay.
Right. This year's May 1st was really in its all-time low. There's nothing to really celebrate, especially since finally the Labour Party the NLC tried to run like a party, because people don't actually realize the whole LP Labour Party is actually a spin-off of Nigerian Labour Congress. But more importantly, we have a crisis at hand. 80 million Nigerians are in the labour force. That's about 40% of our entire population, and out of that 80 million in labor force, 37% of that 80 million can't find jobs. So we've never had it this bad before, right? So there's nothing to celebrate. And then we're talking about subsidy. They're playing with our mind with subsidy. One day they're trying to remove it, the other day they're trying to take it out. So there's really nothing to celebrate that much. Let's hope that the new government will be able to change
things. Mr. Gbona, do you want to comment on that?
I think increase of taxes has never been something new, something that always happens in any economy. I think where Nigerians usually have a problem is how much of that fund that is generated as a result of tax is channeling to real sectors, helping the economy to grow, create infrastructures that give enabling environment for entrepreneurs like Izu and myself to be able to run our business better. But when you collect these taxes and you're using it to pay salaries all the time for civil service, and there's always that mismatch. So, from what I read, it has to do with I think over 100% tax on tobacco importation or something like that.
Oh yeah.
Let's see. The conversation is ongoing. Let's see what will come out from it. But of course, the new administration that is coming in later this month will have a lot on their plates to contend with in terms of engaging this private sector to be sure that everybody's on the same page on whatever policy the government is introducing. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely a lot of expectations on the incoming government. A lot of people have been saying that we just have less than 30 days to go, and lots of things are being said. We are so glad that this administration has waived off most of those bogus things that we're seeing, like the census. They waived it off for now. They postponed it, and also the palliative and all of that. So we are so glad that that has been done. So definitely we are looking forward to more from that. Another story we saw was that of the federal government. So there are plans. So I'm just going to read this report from the Punch. Poverty alleviation. Federal government plans budget allocation for geospatial data. So the Minister of State for Budget and National Planning, Clem Agba, has disclosed that the federal government plans to include an allocation for geospatial data in the budget of government agencies. They were speaking during the sensitization workshop on the use of geospatial data for development, planning, and decision making in Abuja. What say you? Do you see this really having so much effect?
Well, I don't know. Whenever I hear government and the word allocation and budgets, there's only one thing that comes to every Nigerian mind, like who is chopping the money as against what is the money being actually used for, which is what you also was saying. But I want to really suggest that when it comes to technology, right, the government should play a lesser role and just create enabling environment, right? If you look at what's happening in America, before putting a man in space and going to space was mainly something that NASA would do. Now you're having a lot more private SpaceX. Jeff Bezos is coming up with his own as well. So I think that really sometimes the government should know what they're good at and what they're not good at, then outsource the thing they're not good at. I mean, you have a government where the average age of anyone in government, especially from management above, not to talk of director level or even what you call appointments like ministerial positions and not permanent secretaries, at ministerial positions and in the state, in the context of states, right, what you call commissioners, the average age is people in their 50s and 60s. That is not the generation that drives anything that's technology driven. Once you pass 35, you're most likely going to be not a digital native anymore. You're probably a laggard or just someone who's a late adopter. So probably all they need to do is just see whether younger people can run this thing as private sector, right? I don't think that we want to look at meteorological, for example, Nigerian Meteorological Agency, to know whether rain is going to fall or not. We just want to look at Google Map and see that. So let's know, so we don't major sort of in the minor things. That's always been my view on technology and government.
All right.
I think my view on this is I believe, or rather, it's obvious that the data infrastructure in Nigeria is not sufficient or is heavily broken, and any investment in trying to boost up the data infrastructure for Nigeria, for me, is a good thing, because you just want to do simple things and you're looking for data is not readily available. I understand they just recently postponed the census they want to conduct.
Yeah.
You're planning to conduct later this year or next year.
This year.
But if you can have the accurate data of various key sectors and key issues in Nigeria, it goes a long way in helping decision making. But for me, Nigerian problem has never been that of generation. You want to create something. That's never been the problem, generating or allocating budgets. My problem and the problem of Nigeria is the deployment.
Okay.
You can make as much allocation to these things as possible, but at the end of the day, do you use this money to do what it was said?
Absolutely.
It was meant to be used for. At the end of the day, you see that mismatch, And that's where Nigerians usually have problem. But if we can use these resources or whatever allocation they are making for this to do what exactly it is meant for, I think it will go a long way. And you run a business. You know what data can do to your business. If you have data readily available for you, you can make sound decision. You can compete better. You can even manage your cash flow better. These things are very, very important, but they are heavily broken in Nigeria. I think any idea to fix that would be a welcome one, but let it be channeled properly. Because at the end of the day, that's the best way to use our resources.
Okay,
Yeah.
proper management at the end of the day. Lagos, you're still listening to the business show, and you're still here with Daisy. We've got Easy, we've got Essay in the building, and of course we have a special guest, Mr. Ubuna, in the building. And we are still discussing most of those major stories that made the round from last week. We do this every single Thursday morning right here at 9 a.m. 2 more stories to go before we wrap it up, and of course go to the major topic of discussion that we have for today, like we usually do. But before we go into those stories, I just wanted to put out there that right here on the show, we give people the opportunity to bring in their businesses, ideas, and challenges. So this is a good time for you to start sending in the message so you can beat the chase, okay? If you have any challenge in your business, you have anything that is disturbing you, biting you anyhow, yeah, just send a message to 0818 89933, just to put that out there. Now, going back to the major stories of the day. We got quite some interesting news for the blockchain technology. Yesterday, the federal government of Nigeria finally approved the national blockchain policy. This was revealed, of course, by the Minister of Communication and Digital Economy, Issa Patani, during the Federal Executive Council meeting. So the national blockchain policy for Nigeria basically aligns with the national digital economy policy and strategy that was unveiled last 4 years, 2019, November 2019. The policy was developed by the Federal Ministry of Communication in line with the 7th pillar of the Digital Society and Emerging Technology platform. That's the NDEP. So according to the data, the blockchain technologies could boost the global economy with 1.76 trillion by 2030. But I'm just going to leave that to the experts in the building. What do you think about this? Blockchain is something that people have been saying we need to regulate. We need to put up policies there. We need to do this. We need to do that. What say you with this new policy that's been put in place?
Okay, I think is fine. Blockchain is a mainstream conversation right now in the world. I also think that Nigeria we're starting late because countries like Dubai, they're already way ahead. They're already deploying it in their own the government system, in how they run their government. They use blockchain heavily now. But what I want to draw our attention to is sustenance. An administration can create a policy, but then it trickles to another administration that has to implement that policy. So because if you check, the administration that is creating this policy is leaving by end of this month, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Somebody else might come into that seat, and that's not his priority. And that's one of the challenges we must address as a country, where we sustain good policies over different administration. So it doesn't matter who is on seat, as long as it's good for the country. Whoever that sits on that seat continues from wherever anybody stops, so that there's that sustenance and gives us that long-term range for the impact of that policy to come alive and go, permeate the entire fabric of the Nigerian society. Otherwise, we'll create this policy and it just be,
it should just be there.
Talk shop,
talk shop. But I just want to ask, looking at the incoming president, he's coming in pretty soon. Looking at his antecedents, looking at what he has done, the capitalist of Nigeria, and all of that, do you see this policy, maximizing its potentials like it was supposed to be?
They already know my stand on the new president that's coming in. I think the good thing is APC, the new APC is APC Pro Max, right? So
interesting.
It's going to be OPC Pro Max. So it's totally off the tangent if any other political party comes. So we don't expect it to be totally off the tangent. Especially, I don't know what Buhari will be handing over to a Tinubu, but I would assume that if I'm going to hand over something to someone that's in the same party as me, there are certain ground rules, like a particular percentage of the people who I have. I'm not telling you to keep any person in particular. I'm just saying keep a percentage so that there's continuity of a thought process, right? So I think that's something that I would expect that people high up there, when they're passing on the baton, would say keep a percentage. You know, the reason why Lagos State has had some level of stability in the last 20 years is the fact that if you've been to Alausa, you see the same faces for the past 16 years, usually maybe PEM secretary level and grade level. So I think that's pretty much what it is. But more importantly, why everyone's celebrating, what they released was a policy document. And policies are, take away the fancy word, is a body of knowledge of ground rules, work, processes, SOPs that should drive it, right? So it's just documents in the end. And a document is only as good as its contributors, right? So who are the people that contributed to that policy document, right? And they're clearly not people who you expect them to contribute, right? The average age of people in the Ministry of Science and Technology, we're back to that convention again, are guys in their 50s and 60s. These are not the guys who are doing crypto, right? So it's like that thing that we cracked the joke. I think one time in Saudi Arabia, they were creating this agency for women empowerment, and there's this whole hall full of men discussing women empowerment, right? So it's just very funny in itself. So until you can have a lot more tech bros, including, I don't know if anybody knows that 67% of the blockchain process is around black economy businesses. Right? Black economy businesses are those not captured in your GDP. For example, a lot of the racketeering that happens in cybercrime is channeled through blockchain and cryptos. Right? So are you having some of those guys on board? Like I always say, regulators in Nigeria has never been as smart as the practitioners. EFCC has never been as smart as the Yahoo boys. DPR guys and NNPC guys have never been as smart as the filling station guys. The guys in NDLA have never been as smart as the guys peddling the drugs. Right, so until you can bring those guys in, if you look at the American movies, you see like the CIA and FBI, sometimes they recruit former criminals into the system, right? So sometimes it's a bargaining power. So I'm going to take you out of the jail and then you're going to join. Until you can have that type of system, we're just speaking plenty grammar. I want to see a policy document that has a lot more crypto players contributing to that document, as against guys in Abuja in fancy offices who's never ever had any crypto account whatsoever, or blockchain technology speaking all the grammar from ChatGPT.
Okay. Oh my God, I can't believe we brought in ChatGPT here. All right. One last story before we run. IMF has they've cautioned as e-Naira transaction has hit 1.4 million naira. So basically, the managing director of the International Monetary Fund cautioned about unforeseeable consequences that could be brought about by the retail central bank digital currencies. So concerns were expressed while the May 1st event was basically going on. What say you to this?
Sorry, I'm not sure I got the figures. Is hit what?
1.4 million naira.
Really?
1.4 million
I think that could be
that's
wrong.
1.4 million naira. That's I'm
weird.
about to give them the money from back of my pocket. 1.4 million naira.
I mean, it's e-Naira.
It's still very small.
How many
If
people?
they said
I think
1.4
it's-
billion
Nah.
dollars,
Nah.
it will still be small because our GDP is 504 billion. So what percentage of that is the transactions we have every day?
You know, when the e-Naira was launched, people were saying who will use it at the end of the day. Apparently, people are using it now.
But I don't think,
Are they?
relatively speaking,
1.4 million?
for me,
1.4 million.
how many persons are aware? I think this also calls to question how effective the role of what's this organization, National Orientation Agency,
Okay.
what their role is and how effective they are playing that role. Because you see, things like this should permeate the media, even to the grassroots. But how many persons go to your village, go to your hometown? How many persons know about this? You know, and we're talking about financial inclusion. You can't continually just centralize your information dissemination to the city, and you ignore a larger percentage of Nigerians who exist in the rural space. Which, of course, I believe if you can target them, will help that policy that you're trying to introduce to gain inroads. So one of the things I've seen us struggle as a nation is that the National Orientation Agency is not connecting to the present-day Nigeria in terms of using media and storytelling to drive initiative of the government to the common man. Come on, I I talk to my mom. She doesn't even know what e-naira is.
Yeah,
is.
but
I
but
don't know if
some people would argue with that, because as at December 2021, the e-naira consumer wallet had over 583,000 downloads, and while the merchant wallet had
83,000 downloads.
yes,
You re-
and
Do you know
the
how-
wallet
do you know
had
do you know how low that is? Like, let me put it in context. WhatsApp. You know how many downloads you have in Nigeria for WhatsApp?
No, so the thing is, right, we have this number of downloads, right? And that's just the consumer. Of course, merchant is about 83,000 downloads, right? So, and let's don't forget, or let's don't ignore the fact that this is not just Nigeria. This is like over 160 countries.
That's what makes it sad. That's what makes it sadder.
So the thing is, people have
Put it in
wallets.
percentage. I like when we talk figures. Let's talk in percentage, because when you say 500,000, it looks like a large number.
We might not
percentage of Nigerians. That's less than 1%.
We might not
of
be
Nigerians.
there yet, but let's just look at the
Our
number of
orientation is not
downloads.
orientating, like
Let's let's look at the number
If-
of
if a lot
downloads
of people in the-
vis-a-vis the transactions.
No, if a lot of people are
even a well
using WhatsApp in rural areas, then they can as well use e-naira, because they are using phone that is internet enabled. Yes or no?
Sure.
Good. So I believe, I'm not saying that there are no downloads. There are downloads, but relative to what? When you compare, for example, WhatsApp that people use, there can be a better way to gain in where the woman on the street, that man in the village can use his own phone and do whatever transaction
But
he
even
wants. But they
comparing
don't
it to the
even know.
number, to the amount in transactions, 538,000 downloads to 1.4 million
Exactly.
naira. So that's
that's
double.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think that
So, like,
data is
that's-
not correct. I
So
don't
that's
know.
still quite low.
So that's the
Too
thing.
low.
That's the point I was trying to make here,
Yeah.
right? Compared to the downloads, the number is still very low.
Low.
So obviously, it's not even the people down. It's not the issue. So yes, there is the issue that some people don't know, but there is also the issue that people know, people are aware, people have engaged, and they are not still using
downloaded
it.
on your phone, but your phone is about
I don't
to
want to be
notify you
I
that
don't
this is one of the
technical,
apps you
so I'll
haven't
just put
used.
it in a context. The best marketing strategy of all time is a good product, right?
Okay.
Without advert, Gary still sells, right? There's no billboard of anybody advertising Gary. If the product is good, people will use. So if 500,000 people are downloading, let's assume it's one download per person, which is not the case, and then most people are bought it. It means that the product is probably not easy to use enough. So I have it on my system. We all do that consumer behavior. Download this app, we try to turn it on, it's hanging.
Yeah.
We've downloaded it, but we're not using it. And that's the real classic story of the Nigerian government when they produce stuff. It just doesn't work. Like you can literally commission a pipe bomb water that does not bring out clean water. Right, or a hospital that doesn't have drugs. It's the digital version of this that is e-naira, and e-naira that is not naira in. Like,
When you're introducing something like this, what you're invariably trying to do is to change people's habits.
yeah.
You're trying to change the habit for me putting my money under the pillow, or you just going to the bank to make transaction, to something different. And for one of the ways to change people's habit is to give them enough saturated information that will hit a critical mass and they will change the way they behave. And it brings us back to the National Orientation Agency. How many of us are aware? How many times have you been told about this particular idea?
Yeah.
Let's even bring it down to, see, I think we sometimes we over amplify how Nigeria is urban. And that is why some persons get too many surprises during election. Nigeria is, there's so many persons in the rural space who are not even educated. And they decide a lot of things. They decide who becomes your president. So when we are creating this kind of arrangement, we focus, Lagos, Port Harcourt, and you forget there are so many persons who can make this thing go viral, and they're in the village or they're in the towns outside Lagos. So I believe National Orientation Agency has a lot to do. Maybe they need to change their playbook on how they educate
On a lighter note,
and inform
I haven't
Nigerians.
heard of that agency for the past 10 years. We just remind them that there's an agency called National Orientation. Last time
Because
I heard of it was
when
Dora
we had the
Akinwumi.
cash issues lately,
Yeah.
did you hear them talking to Nigerians? They didn't talk to Nigerians. But this is when we needed that sensitization adequately to get Nigerians at least in a state of consciousness of what is playing out in the system, get
Yeah.
them
OPE did
patient.
the work of
and,
Naira.
and then you're talking so
Money points.
I don't know how infused CBN team and national orientation team and every other agency team, how they work together to ensure that Nigerians have readily available information in a way that it builds a certain level of critical mass to change behavior. If they don't do that, what happens is that you introduce a good policy, you go to Abuja, you launch it with all the glitteratis and all, fanfare, but at the end of the day, people revert to their old habits because they don't have sufficient information to make that change.
Exactly. Thank you. Thank you so much for all of this information. Actually, the last time we heard from National Orientation Agency was during election. They did a lot of work during the elections. We saw lots of sensitization in different languages and all of that. So probably their priorities are not just in things like this. They just focus on bigger things and then they leave the smaller things, forgetting that at the end of the day, these things go hand in
bigger
hand.
than payments. They just
You're doing
You're a financial person, so you're thinking of money.
Over 70% young people, and you're doing such kind of advice. You're putting it on AIT. NTA.
Our incoming president is. So
this
let's
guy-
leave that. Thank you very much. Let's go on a short break. We'll be right back.
Hot 93.3, Lagos.
Guy, how far now? What's up with this face today? Did anything happen at the office?
My brother, it seemed like this business thing is not my calling. We just had our 4th consecutive loss. At this point, all my investors are almost pulling out.
Calm down. We always don't know what to do. That's why a consultant like Hexavia exists. Hexavia, it's a business strategy and management consulting firm. They have network of management and business executive breakfast and strategy session. It's called Breakfast with Izu. He will be sharing with select CEOs, startups and executives disruptive hacks, models and strategy to business growth and structure.
Wow, link me now.
To attend, just send interested to this number 0803-520-2891. Venue Eco Hotel and Suite this Saturday 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. Limited slots available.
Omo, I feel refreshed. See you on Saturday.
Xavier is a business and management consulting firm with over 128 businesses restructured, 200 and more businesses started, 2 MBAs, a decade of experience. We can take your business to a whole new level.
We're broadcasting around Lagos and the world. This is your #1 hit music station, Hot 93.3. The Business Show with Hexavia. It's the business clinic on radio. Come, learn and solve problems around strategy and structure. Growing your business. Join Izu, Daisy, and Essay every Thursday, 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. on Hot 93.3.
Yes, it's still Hot 93.3 FM, and you're still here with us in the building on the Business Show. Remember, we are still taking your messages. If you have any issue in your business and you would like us to address that issue one way or the other, whatever it is, marketing, people, product, whatever, just bring it here. And we're going to use your business as a case sample on whatever we are discussing today. And speaking of what we are discussing today, we have an expert with storytelling. So you already know what that is.
So we are talking about the power of storytelling in creating a cult-like brand.
Now, the key word there is cult-like brand. You want to be the person. You want to have the brand. You want to be that brand that people literally come to. You want to be that brand that
People
would be the household name.
People argue on your behalf on Twitter.
Exactly.
You don't have to. Wahala does. You don't have to do. My fans will do it for me. It's fine.
They're like beehive, eh?
Exactly.
Yeah, and of course, we are blessed to have the founder and CEO of Sabi Writers in the building, Mr. Chinonso Bogo. Thank you so much for joining us.
Very much welcome. Thank you.
All right, and of course, we have Izu. Izu is always here with us. So I'm just...
He's the organo. The emperor will always be there.
Oh my god. Okay, so storytelling. While we were talking about the major stories in the business scene, the storytelling came in some way, and it seemed like it's a nitty-gritty of most of the things that we do every day. How you communicate, how you pass messages is very, very important, so that at the end of the day you can get the desired result at the end of the day. So, Mr. Bueno, just help us. Mr. Chinonso. Forgive me. Mr. Chinonso. Yeah. Thank you so much. Please, help us explain how that really helps.
Okay. First, let me start by correcting the storytelling of my son. Okay, so the thing is, let me take you back to when. Are you the first son? Are you the first child?
No, I'm the last.
I just wanted to
You don't know
picture.
my story.
I just wanted to picture. I just wanted to picture when your mom gave birth and people came around, rejoicing with her. Came to visit, and between the time they stayed with your mom and the time they left the building, what were they doing?
So
Can you just picture that moment when people came to visit your mom that just gave birth, and then between the time they came to rejoice with your mom and the time they leave?
They
We're
were
waiting
talking-
for food too.
is it food? No, it's not food. They
Like, to
were
bring food for them.
They're probably like discussing like
how
some like good tips, but also like women, like horror stories, man. Like
yeah.
Now she gets it. They were essentially telling stories.
I know.
Is it that your mom was telling them about her experience in the hospital, or somebody is also sharing her own experience when she gave birth to her first child, or somebody is telling you, "Oh, when I was coming, there was traffic." See, storytelling is the very fabric that holds society together. Right? If there's a disconnect between humans' existence and storytelling, you see that we lack substance. And that is why if I come here and I throw up a chart and I speak about this chart and I'm giving you big figures, you tend to slip off. Because there's a part of your brain that has to, that is yearning for that connection to be able to stay alert. And that is why I get invited to speak at events. And this is what I've noticed. When I'm speaking and I said, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to tell you a story.
Everyone sits-
I noticed something. They are just in their seats. So the natural DNA of humans is wired to embrace and yearn for stories. Right? And the moment humanity is separated from that, we always have a problem. And that is how important storytelling is. So if you check people who join your company, if you hire new employees right now, they will connect to your product more and your philosophy when it is anchored on a story. So if you come to one of my offices in Lagos, one of the offices, you will have, call it African Room. On the left-hand side is a picture of when we were planning to launch Sabi Writers, and I was working with my first employee in my bedroom. So, and my co-founder took that picture on 25th, on Christmas Day in 2017, because we were planning to launch in 2018. On the right-hand side is a mural painting of the 54 African countries. Now, what we have done with that room is that and that's the room we use for orientation anytime somebody is joining the company. So what we have done is that we always use these two polar apart images to tell a story. And the moment we do that during orientation, we'll see the light come up in your head. And we'll tell you, this is where we are coming from. We'll tell you the story. And the next thing, this is where we are going. And this is where we are. So storytelling for organization is very, very powerful. As a matter of fact, it's so powerful that small businesses that don't have big budget can actually use that to bypass
Yeah.
the murky waters or the long path of competing with the giants in the industries. Let me give you a practical example. When I started Sabi Writers in 2018, of course, I started in my bedroom, no client, nothing. I've moved from from Enugu to Lagos in 2014. My business had collapsed. I was broke. I was depressed. I was also suicidal. I moved back to my family house in Ajegulo in a one-room apartment. And, it was terrible. Now, guess what is happening to you guys right now? Did you notice what's happening? You see how you're paying attention?
Yes, of
That's
course.
because I'm telling a story.
And I also noticed the specifics.
If you have to be very good at it to be able to grab attention and channel people's that attention to something else, to where you want, because it is an art. There's a science to it, but there's also an art. You need to know where to pause to allow the word sink in. You need to know when to elevate your pitch. You also need to know when to dramatize your statement.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, what is doing to you is that if I tell you, pardon me, your name, I forgot that.
Daisy.
Daisy, if I tell you, when I was coming here, I saw a white elephant. You're not, in your brain, you're not seeing the words.
Yeah.
Immediately, you've pictured the elephant. So when I'm telling you a story, I'm not getting you to hear what I am saying. I am getting you to see what I am saying.
Yeah. Visualize.
And if you can picture it, it is usually hard to forget. And that is why if you want to make your message stick as a brand, tell a story.
So, at what level? Because the example that you gave it at the orientation level.
Okay.
I'm sure that there is also in the marketing level. So, at what level is it really, really effective, especially when you're trying to drive a business? What are the areas? You talked about recruitment. We understand that is also there in marketing. Are there other areas as well that storytelling can be very, very
Absolutely.
effective?
The entire day-to-day operation can be turned into a story. I can leave this place and write a story. My EA is in the studio with me. She's taking a picture. She's doing video. She's already gathering materials for my storytelling. And I'll tell people, on the 4th of May, 2023, I was in the studio with great man Izu and, and I'll just build a story around it. People like gossip. They want to know what is behind the red curtain. So for a business, you want to turn your everyday activity, even the ones that are considered failures, into storytelling. Because if a client, I tell stories about clients that terminated my contract, and I use that story to get new clients. I tell stories about jobs that I've done well, that clients are happy. For example, a client comes in the nature of my job, we're not allowed to mention our client's name and the details of the project that we do. So what I've done is that I use storytelling to bypass that non-disclosure. So a client comes to my building and we'll have a meeting. I will just say, hey, 2 days ago, this particular person, I will not mention the name, and I will tell a story about that. And that was what I did at the early part of Sabi Writers that made us grab the attention of the market. So to answer the question, everything you do, see it as a material for storytelling in your business. You're coming to work, there is traffic, write a story about that.
All right. So there are different things. There's a thin line, right, when you're telling a story and what actually is. For example, you told us how you moved from Enugu to Lagos. You could just simply say, I moved from Enugu to Lagos. But then you said, no, I moved. I was almost depressed. I was suicidal. And then all of that, right?
Yeah.
So at what point do you put in all of those nitty-gritties? And is it okay to just add some sugar, salt, all of those things into it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think there are stories that you could tell as a fiction. I wrote a story on LinkedIn, I think last week, and I was just describing the experience. Your wife just gave birth, and I was describing the experience that Izu and I would have gone through, while our wives were in labor and we were waiting for the child to come out. And by the time I was done writing that story, people were just commenting, no, you need to tell us part 2. So one of the things I do is that you need to learn how to use adjectives. Say, for example, you want to say the house was big. You could say the house was big in a gigantic, way. The other thing again you could use could be your power of description. Right? Remember I said storytelling, the beauty of storytelling is that you don't want the listener to hear what you're saying. You want them to see what you're saying. So the key to that is knowing how to describe things. If I come into this place, for me, I have that advantage because I'm a writer, but you don't have to be a writer to do all of these things. Some persons can tell a story orally, and by the time they describe, you say, I didn't know this AC was here. Because they saw detail and they are describing it in a way that, wow, you can picture it in your mind. So the hack there is knowing how to describe things. Creating that mental picture for whoever that is going to be listening to you. And it goes a long way.
The reason why I asked that question is because, authenticity is very, very important. And remember, it's a business we're trying to build. And remember that we're trying to get a business to become a cult, more like a cult brand, right? So how important really is authenticity in a storytelling process, when creating a cult brand?
I think we need to differentiate between what something being authentic is and then when something is an outright lie. For the one that is outright lie, I don't support. So when somebody comes and the person is lying about their product, that the product can do this and do that, and that's completely false, that's wrong. However, if you check the big brands, you see some of your celebrities, they come and they're advertising a particular product and they tell you, wow, this product is lovely. Ladies and gentlemen, this is an ad. And trust me, it's possible they have not used that product.
Exactly.
They are called to do,
especially the skin guys.
Would you say that they are lying?
Your skin has always been nice. Why?
So would you say that they are lying?
Yeah.
Would you say the company is lying by running an ad where somebody is? However, of course, there could be a legal implication to an extent if this person is taking it to the extreme, because they have had cases like that. But what I tell people is, at the end of the day, what is your intent? Whatever you are selling, whatever you're producing, is it adding value to the people that you're selling to? I can come to the public and say all manner of things about Sabi writers. I can describe very well. I can write stories that endears, in the minds of people. But at the end of the day, when the rubber hits the road, I can't deliver value. Then that becomes a problem. So at the end of the day, you want to be sure that whatever you are selling is delivering value to the people that you're selling to. With that taken care of, I think you're a good way ahead of the game in terms of what you're doing.
Great. So how do you then leverage that story into really creating a following that's
cult-like.
That is cult-like, that you can't shake, where people are it's not just a story that they hear and they're like, that's cool. It's a story that they believe in. That it's like when people joke that oh, this brand is my friend and this product is my bestie and this shoe is my guy. How do you use storytelling to really get people to develop an almost personal relationship with your brand?
Yeah. I think there are two ways I'll answer that. The first one is that people want to see themselves in your story. Right? Your story has to be relatable.
Can you give us example with brands, of course, that have done this very well?
Typical brand is, Champions League, what they do with UEFA Champions League. You see boys or men, even old men arguing about football. And you'll be wondering, what the heck is all this? What is going on here? But what these guys have done is that they have conditioned men like me who watch this football such that if Chelsea wins, they don't say Chelsea has won. They say I have won or we have won. Because they see themselves in the game.
Yeah.
So they bring them in things like, for example, tell us about what you think about the last match. They start arguing. That argument is part of the infusion, making the story relatable to those people. Okay. The other thing is the hard part, which is consistency.
Okay.
You cannot seek to build a cult-like followership for your brand by being, by not being consistent. Is going to tell, because at the end of the day, you need to be able to get to that point where it gets to a critical mass and people can say, no, this person is here for the long haul. I want to trust them enough to follow.
Okay.
So just to add, because when we put brand names to it, it just makes sense. It's a good thing you talk about UEFA. I was going to think Heineken in UEFA.
Okay.
Heineken is one brand that's going to leverage on UEFA more than anything else, because beer and football goes too well. I don't know people that say, oh, let's pop champagne over a bottle, or let's watch the football over champagne. People say, let's watch football over beer, right? And Heineken is able to connect that, like the same way with Nike and sports. So about seeing yourself, sometimes not even seeing yourself in the brand, is seeing your aspirational self in the brand. So a lot of people who buy Nike shoes are not as fit as a Michael Jordan or a Usain Bolt, but they don't mind being that. So sometimes aspirational brand is not even trying to sell to the person, but selling to what the person wants to be. I remember this story years ago. We have a client called Rough and Tumble. We're Rough and Tumble head office in GRA, right? Me and Antinike and them. And then this woman shows up on a bike, right? Okada. That's not the kind of people you see in Rough and Tumble. Rough and Tumble is sort of high street, premium for, right? And comes and spends so much money. You have to go downstairs to talk to this lady, right? So why did she spend that amount of money? She had always passed through that place on Okada, hustling, saying the day I make it in life, I will spoil my children by buying them clothes. That day she made the biggest deal of her life. First thing that hit her spirit was, I've arrived. Now my kids this year will not go to Yaba Bend Down, right? So sometimes it's also showing your aspirational self, and it's really, really important. There are great brands that need to do that. Think Different, Apple.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. And I think another thing that these guys do to be able to create that cult-like followership is to create a common enemy. So see that in football where there's that debate, Chelsea is better than Liverpool, Liverpool is better than Real Madrid. That you would think that, some persons fight about it,
Brand wars.
but it is part of creating followership and loyalty for a brand, where they create a common enemy and everybody just rally around that mission to defeat the enemy. And you see a lot of people holding on to their own ideologies just to be sure that they are part of the league that is fighting this particular enemy. So we see that a lot. And somehow, as a business owner, you have to also orchestrate that experience for people to keep them within your circle.
It
Yeah.
can be like it's not even just like creating it's the illusion of an enemy. Like
Yes.
you allow people to create it. Davido versus Wizkid, like those two get
Coca-Cola
along,
versus
but they're
Pepsi.
not. But
Yeah.
they're not
Yeah.
going to like Marvel versus DC. Those they share resources, they share directors, but like they're not going to when the fans are arguing.
Yeah.
Is Superman better than Iron Man? Is Kevin Feige
yeah.
going to come out and say anything? No.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, Lagos, it's time for you to come into the conversation. We want to hear what you have to say. And in case you have questions, we're here to answer. We are your business clinic experts right now. 0818-242-6591. 0818-242-6591. I'm going to take that slow. 0818-242-6591. That is the number for you to call into, call and of course into the studio, and we'll take your calls. You can also send in messages to 0818-0089933, 0818-0089933. I'm just trying to see how we can relate this to a local business on the ground, right? Because most Nigerians, most of us, I think last year you were telling us how some people are CEOs and some people they need to scale. You said a lot about that, and Nigerians seem to fall under that. We seem to fall in that CEO category. Most of us own businesses now, right? And we need to be business owners. I've forgotten how you explained that thing last week.
I can't even remember myself.
Yeah, so we need to apply this to our business, right?
Yeah.
So how do we, and most of us market through social media, like our biggest friend right now. So how do we employ this storytelling technique in social media? Because, and we mentioned the thin line between lying and authenticity and all of that, right? So with someone saying that this skin product will do amazing things to yourself, and we know, sister, brother, this thing did not do anything to you. You've not even used it, right? So how do we use social media and not lie and still tell a story that would make us that cult-like brand?
Can I even ask as a local example of a great storytelling brand? We know all the international brands, Coca-Cola, Apple, Nike, Harley Davidson, great storytelling brands. Christianity is one of the best storytelling brands of all time. This girl is about to wed. Few days to her wedding, she finds out she's pregnant.
Leave that conversation. Let's stay away from that conversation.
That's Mary's story in the Bible. About to wed.
Oh my
That's the person that God wants to born his child.
Oh
like
my
you see how
God.
funny that story is. But that's deep in itself.
Oh
right?
yes.
I mean,
Yes.
you know,
It's a story.
But
even
local.
Jesus deployed that
storytelling.
principles when he, you know, they call it the principles of the parables,
Yeah.
different
Parables,
parables. He
yeah.
used parables, but parables are essentially storytelling. That was what he was doing, right? So, and you could see that it's. And today, even many years after, we are leveraging these parables as storytelling to even teach some life principles that may not be religious as it were. And for me, I think storytelling is
What's
really,
local?
really.
Then local examples. So that's why we talk about the foreign ones. Local examples.
So it may not be a company, it might be a course. For example, we know what happened, the Lekki NSAS. You know, you could see different versions.
Fantastic.
That's
story.
a
Story
local
of
example of
get
how
together.
people can rally around, you know, a course that is a story that is told properly. And storytelling can be used for good or for bad. I'm not saying what happened was, I'm not taking any side, but I'm saying one local example is that particular experience.
wish it was brand, yeah.
Because there's a way you tell the story about that, you know, experience. You could see Nigerians' emotions begin to, you know, build up, right? And you see people, you know, young people rallying around. Some persons who joined that cause didn't even know what was happening. They don't know, but like I said, common enemy. They just want to, you know,
Yes.
they don't like the government. So EndSARS became a clarion call for people to say, no, enough is enough to the government. So that's one example. Another example, I can localize that by what we did and what we're doing in Sabi Writers. Because now, the very nature of our company prevents us from sharing the details of clients and the jobs that we have done for them. So what did you do? We started using storytelling. You can't charge me to court because I have not violated any non-disclosure. But I'm using storytelling. I'm not mentioning your name, but I'm using fictional characters to tell a story about an experience that I had working with you. And that gave us that inroads at the early stage where we don't even have huge marketing budgets. We don't even have a huge clientele. as it were, in 2018, 2019. So I was, for every client that comes, everything that happens between you and us, I'll turn it into a story. But of course, you can't tell that you're the one we're talking about. So these are two examples that readily comes to mind.
But you know, so it just sparked a challenge. Top of my head, I can't even think of case studies of Nigerian brands, and I think that's an opportunity for most Nigerian brands to start creating stories. The last story I ever heard of it, Nigerian brand tell, was Mirinda. This was like 30 years ago. The Orange Man. I don't know if
yes, I remember. Yeah.
I was in primary school. I remember everybody like it was the deepest story ever told, and ever since I can't.
Or even 7-Up, Fido Dido.
Fido story, yeah. Fido, but I don't think Fido was Nigerian. Was
I hope some persons that are not speaking Greek.
A lot of people are confused at
That's
this
how
time.
way back stories that were told.
The way she's looking, you can tell that she's.
Tell us about this story.
Stories like I don't think of.
So these are characters that were created by these brands and Nigerians connected because of, for example, Fido Dido. It has this slim character that has this about 7 threads of hair.
Yeah, dreads.
I saw a 7-Up ad this year that was trying to bring back Fido Dido.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
is it
so
7-Up or Fanta
No, it's
with
7-Up.
play?
It's 7-Up.
Oh, 7-Up. Okay.
Oh, so it's like Indomie's Indomitable.
Yes, Indomie would have been it. I don't know, but they've not been consistent.
No, the is too tush.
Yes.
You know, there's the way you make a story is too tush, but Nigerians will not connect. When you bring it, to the locally, Nigerians, it becomes they turn it into a slogan, they turn it into a
MTN's I don't put.
Okay, so that was. It just wasn't deep
they
enough, but yes, it was a good story. It wasn't deep enough. Like
They use
deep
comedy.
stories, like there are stories that you forget that they are tied to brands. People forget that Santa Claus, the cause of Santa Claus is Coca-Cola. Is the mascot Coca-Cola? Is this guy who comes to the North Pole with a sleigh? That's a Coca-Cola story.
Oh my
like
God.
Coca-Cola, the whole Christmas story. Like Coca-Cola, Christmas is not red and white. Christmas is
There are
brown
children listening.
and
You are like ruining Christmas right now.
Right?
I don't know if you remember the story. There's a story also that went viral when we were young. I'm sure some of you, must have heard about. But that's one of them. I'm talking about the story that Nigerian played India.
But brands don't do that.
And this story, even as me being an adult right now, there's a part of me that still believes that story was true.
You know this thing that they say on social
But
media.
that story was sold so well.
You realize that India doesn't really pay for that.
So they said, who was the person? They say, Paraji. They say he took his boots, and then when he wanted to play the penalty, he threw the boots by the right. The guy flew to the right, then he played it to the left as well. And that was how Nigeria won.
Oh my God! That
was a story that was told. And that was why I
Yeah.
said the story could be true or false, but it's the story.
Yeah.
Right? Because the subconscious mind may not be able to differentiate between what is true or what is false, but it just captures it. And that is why this whole concept of indoctrination is very powerful. Somebody can take you, a child, and tell the wrong story, and that child will grow up.
Yeah.
For God's sake, there was a time we all believed that it was Mungo Park that discovered River Niger.
We still do actually.
There was
History
and I don't,
People are beginning.
that was what we learned back then in school, and we grew up believing that Mungo Park discovered River Niger. That is, I don't understand. So right now,
even before you
so storytelling is very powerful, and that's a typical example of the local case study.
We have had an amazing conversation today, and I think I had so much fun. We don't have so much time. Yeah, so we have to run right now. But then we just want to say thank you so much for coming into the studio, gentlemen and lady. It has been an amazing time. So if you're just joining us, this has been the Business Show right here on Hot 93.3 FM. It comes to you every single Thursday. But I'm just going to let Mr. Buna to have his last say before he runs.
What Sabi writers do and
Exactly.
how we can contact you.
So I'm sure a lot of persons probably know about Sabi Writers. But let me say, Sabi Writers is a writing company. We provide end-to-end writing services to individuals, organizations, and government institutions across Africa. So you want to write a book, you want to write corporate profile proposals, pitch deck. You probably want to write a letter to your crush or a love letter to your wife or your husband, but you don't have the time or you don't have